basic three-point lighting in Maya. For three-point lighting, we're going to use spotlight. So under rendering, spotlight, this is what a spotlight looks like. And in three-point lighting, we're going to have three lights. So I'm going to position this light. The easiest way to position it is to use one of the other views and go to look through selected. So once I go through look through selected, I have my spotlight in view and I can position it. Typically for three-point lighting, based on the camera, if hypothetically our camera is right here, for instance, then we will want our lighting set up to give a slight diagonal for the key light. So I'm going to call this key. Then I am going to position my second light, and I'm going to hit Control D, look through selected camera. So now I'm on key 1, which is now called fill, and I will position this opposite to soften some of the shadows. Once that is in position, we Control D again, then go through look through selected, and then I will put a rim or hair light, which, as you can see, is pointing down and behind the character. Now this is the most difficult to show any rim light. However, I'm going to use that for now. Once the position of these three lights are good, I will go ahead and begin manipulating the values of each one. Now the key, Control A, brings us the attribute editor window. The intensity is set to 1 for using ratios, and we're going to keep this ratio, that's fine. We're going to turn on shadows. 1024 will work for us. And I'm also going to just change the shadow color just slightly to maybe about 90% black on the key. Now when I render this, now I'm going to use this camera, look through selected camera, and turn on the render gate. I'm going to hit render on this, and now you can see the render with the shadow with a 1-to-1 on everything here. I'm going to go to my fill and modify the fill. I'm not going to turn on shadows. Instead I'm going to lower the intensity. Something like 0.5 is a good ratio. Hit render, you can start to see the shadows coming through. Now if I turn this to 0, you can see how much more. Very dark, very Hollywood-ish between that and the other. Put this back to 0.5. Now if I go to my rim, typically this is going to be a pretty hot 1.5 or 2 would be a good starting point. And I render this, and now you can see the difference there in the brightness. You can also see that it's also going through the hat. You're getting a nice highlight there. We can turn on shadows. 1024. Okay, so you can see how that rim is catching a bit there. It's also creating a shadow there. You can lower this to make more of a gray. Okay, so you see how that's working. It's working pretty nicely. Overall, I think this is an awesome approach for three-point lighting to make it effective and relatively quick. So finally, I'm going to modify the color of the lights. White doesn't exist in real life, nor should it exist in the 3D world. So I'm going to change the lights and the color, and I'm going to modify them just slightly to give them a slight variation. Using red in the back, I may use just a hint of maybe a little bit of yellow here. And now when I render, I'm going to store that and I'll render it again. Okay, you can see that the render looks a little bit more blue.